We have to talk about Rob Feinstein on this show, Liam.
Well, we knew it was going to happen eventually.
Yep. So, in case you don't know the story, Rob Feinstein...
You know what's crazy? Like, just before we jump in, there's like a whole group of people who don't know this kind of stuff.
Yeah, because this is 20 years ago now. Well, it's 18, but like it's the bones of 20 years ago now. You know, it's ancient history to a large number of wrestling fans.
Which is, it's kind of mind-blowing that we're reaching that stage where it's like these things that were like the pamphlet day one, hey, you want to get introduced into like the wrestling world beyond WWE? These are the crazy stories that you need to know. And I think we saw a bit of that with the Punk Teddy Hart stuff, and it's like people didn't even know about that. So now we have this here, and it's like, wow, there's gonna be people here who are hearing about the RF video thing for the first time.
This feels like a thing that there probably should be an episode of Dark Side about, doesn't it?
Yeah, probably, because it's the dissolution of company relationships on everything as well. So it's like there's layers on layers on layers for it.
So you might be asking, well, this is a Ring of Honor story. How does it affect TNA? We'll get to that in a minute. But Rob Feinstein was the money behind RF Video and, by extension, Ring of Honor and Ring of Honor in general. He owned Ring of Honor. He was part owner of Ring of Honor.
On-screen character.
Well, yes, that too. And he was caught in a sting by NBC10, which is a network affiliate, and perverted-justice.com. They came together to conduct a sting, which they regularly do, apparently. It's a thing that the pervertedjustice.com do.
Well, wasn't Perverted Justice the one that was linked up with How to Catch a Predator too? I always remember Chris Hansen shouting them out.
Maybe? I don't know.
Yeah, I think that was they were linked up at one point.
So they conducted a sting which Rob Feinstein thoroughly fell into, where he thought he was talking to a 14-year-old boy. There was even, like, when he asked that 14-year-old his age, he's like, I'll pretend you said 18, and you just want to die inside.
Well, that's the classic line. If you were getting into pro wrestling in, like, any sort of forum age, you heard that line echoed, quoted over everything for years.
So when that became public, when that came to light, there was a huge scandal in Ring of Honor. I'd imagine Through the Years has covered this already, right?
I haven't gotten to it, but yeah, they will have.
So I'd say if you want in-depth coverage of the Ring of Honor side of this, I'd say go listen to Through the Years with Trevor Dame. That's probably the place to talk about the Ring of Honor side of this, but like everybody was furious. A bunch of people pulled out of Ring of Honor, like Bobby Heenan pulled out of bookings, Abyss pulled out of bookings, Low-Ki pulled out of bookings.
Low-Ki was was the real famous one for it too.
Because like he's the Ring of Honor star. You know, Abyss had only done a couple dates. Bobby Heenan was only coming in to do one show, but like Low-Ki's the Ring of Honor guy, and he's like, no, I want nothing to do with this.
Respectable.
And like there was a big concern that they'd lose AJ, both because of TNA and both obviously because AJ is a very religious man. But some of the Ring of Honor people rallied around. The likes of Joe and Daniels and Punk were like, no, we'll keep this in place. Rob is gone from Ring of Honor. And that was the big thing, whether or not Rob Feinstein was actually gone from Ring of Honor or pro wrestling gone from Ring of Honor.
So you ever wonder about the similarities between TNA and ROH? Is this person actually gone from the company, or is it pro wrestling gone from the company?
You know, Dave in The Observer goes through like the history of people being gone but not gone from pro wrestling, that there's scandals where they just lay low, and he doesn't even include the TNA one where Vince Russo fake worked for TNA for 6 months.
Which was like, 6 months ago.
So they said Rob Feinstein was out. They said he has nothing to do with Ring of Honor anymore. They said that, no money goes toward him at the end of the day. They were trying to save the company, essentially. And this is where TNA come into it. Because TNA don't have a ton of wrestlers crossing over with Ring of Honor these days. They only have really a handful. There's Styles, there's Daniels, there's Red, who had just returned. Chris Sabin was injured, so he was off the table. Punk was the other big guy, but he was off because of the Teddy Hart fight. And then like a couple of other people like Abyss. So there's not like a huge crossover between the rosters right now in this moment of history. But TNA started pressuring AJ Styles and Christopher Daniels not to take any more future ROH dates. There were reports that said they used the reason they were afraid it would botch up their Fox Sports Net deal. So they were afraid, like, when people Google AJ Styles, when you're with Fox Sports or with any potential television partner, when you Google AJ Styles, you'll see Ring of Honor, you'll see Rob Feinstein and a pedophilia scandal. And all of a sudden, people might not want to do business either with pro wrestling in general or TNA in particular. So it's not entirely unfounded that TNA would be like, listen, we don't want anything to do with this.
I mean, what can you expect?
Yeah.
It's not like a Ring of Honor and TNA had the most loving relationship themselves at times. You know, they've got quite cold and frosty on each other, just with booking stuff and, you know, the bidding war for Raven's hair. So I'm sure it's like they both were like, we don't mind working each other. We can see the benefits of it. But like, if we're trying to move to that next level, we don't need to be associated with a scandal like this.
And like even WWE was the same. They suggested that Jim Cornette stay away from Ring of Honor. But yeah, as you mentioned, like TNA had the thing where when TNA signed a bunch of people to deals, they were like, you have to start using their TNA characters, which didn't actually happen, but it's one of those just stupid demands that probably just, you know, coldened relationships between the two companies again.
Yeah, there's definitely bits and pieces like that, but that's what's going to happen when you have companies sort of both rising at the same time.
So when Jeff Jarrett suggested they work there and ultimately like issued an ultimatum that he doesn't want any more TNA people working for Ring of Honor, Ring of Honor booker Gabe Sapolsky flew to Nashville to talk through some issues with TNA officials. TNA officials had been asking wrestlers who worked for them as well as Ring of Honor to start turning down ROH bookings, primarily because TNA feared Fox Sports now wouldn't be pleased if TNA wrestlers were associated with ROH and the Rob Feinstein scandal. TNA officials wanted written proof that Feinstein was no longer associated with the company in any way, so that if the issue was brought up by FSN, they could provide evidence that they took steps to be sure Feinstein wasn't associated with Ring of Honor anymore. Sapolsky discussed the matter with Jeff Jarrett and Bob Ryder. All indicators are that an agreement was reached, we'll talk about that more next month, to allow wrestlers to continue working for both Ring of Honor and TNA, and TNA feeling satisfied that ROH is no longer associated with Feinstein. So that's the big TNA tie-in here, that TNA were afraid that the Feinstein stuff would potentially cost them their TV deal.
Not an unreasonable worry, I don't think. It's a nice little instance here of TNA seeming somewhat smart, where they're like, hey, can we get this in writing, please?
Yes.
Just so we have a little something on the back, like, because, you know, they could have just brother handshaked it, whatever. But, like, that seems some actual foresight from TNA there to be like, we want this written.
So that if it does in fact come out that Rob Feinstein is still involved in some capacity in Ring of Honor, which I believe he is, he still stayed, even at the time he was like, I'm pulling out of RF video as well, and that didn't end up being final, did it?
No.
So...
He's still there now, I think.
Yeah, I think he is. So TNA were not entirely unfounded in being like, give us written, demonstrable proof that we have recourse over.
We've been to the courts, alright? We know how this works.
We've been sued at least 4 times in our 2 years of existence already, thank you very much.
We know how to be on the other end, okay?
There was the logo thing, there was the fraud thing, so...
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we'll talk more about the relationship between TNA and Ring of Honor probably next month, but it's pretty icy at the moment.
Mm-hmm.